Welcome to this special dialogue with Ghassan Salamé, who I'm delighted to introduce to you. Ghassan Salamé is Professor of International Relations Emeritus at Sciences Po Paris and the founding Dean of the Paris School of International Affairs, PSIA. Ghassan Salamé served both in politics and diplomacy. His most recent assignment was as the UN Secretary General Special Representative in Libya until 2020. I'm Francesco Rocchetti, Rome Director and ISPI Secretary General, and I'm glad to moderate today's dialogue, which is part of the year-long initiative, which will lead us to the 9th edition of the Rome Dialogues, to be held from the 2nd to the 4th of November. Is co-promoted by ISPI and the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and well, thank you for being with us today. Let's begin. March 2023, Professor, marked the 20th anniversary of the US military operation in Iraq. While today the world is wondering about the long-term geopolitical consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you are among those who 20 years later continue to see the US-led invasion of Iraq as a fundamental break in the international order. What parallel can we draw between these two key events, Iraq and Ukraine, and what are these events' implications for the international order?
There is a threat going from Baghdad to Kiev. There is a threat. And this threat is the following. After the end of the Cold War, for like 15 years, we thought that the war is becoming obsolescent, that there is not going to be wars. We had a number of books. Behind me, you'll find books written by people, Pinker and Müller, and I don't want to quote them all, telling us that the war is going to disappear from the human horizon. Because for the first time, Montesquieu, with his idea of du commerce, the idea that trade is going, that globalization is going to help. The fact that most countries in the world, then at least, were democratic. The fact also that there is this internet revolution, and one of its ideologists, Negroponte, said that the internet will make states, borders, and nationalism disappear at the same time. So there was a big idea of hope. And then we had the invasion of Iraq in 2003. This invasion of Iraq was important for many reasons. First, because it was not the very first time the Americans were interfering without authorization of the Security Council. They have done this already in 1999 with Kosovo. But Kosovo was a humanitarian disaster. In Iraq, there was no humanitarian disaster. So we were told that there are weapons of mass destruction. There was no weapons of mass destruction. We were told that Saddam was in relation with Al-Qaeda. There was no relation between Saddam and Al-Qaeda. So the first thing is that you start a war of choice and not of necessity against a country that did nothing to you and under false arguments. If you do it and you are an unknown country or a small country, it's not very important. But when you are the number one country, it's like the first student in the classroom is the one who's cheating. That's the kind of effect. So it creates emulation among the other students. And the fact that the United States of America is the real artisan of the order built in 1945, the United Nations in San Francisco, Bretton Woods, IMF and World Bank, etc. The order built in 1945 was to a large extent an American invention. The fact that America was violating its own rules-based system that it had itself created was too much for the other countries to ignore. So despite the fact that the Security Council did not give the authorization, but there was no reason to attack Iraq, the idea of democracy came after, when everybody discovered there were no weapons of mass destruction, no connection to Al-Qaeda. Then everybody's saying, well, we attacked Iraq in order to establish a democracy. But it came after the war. So you had a process of emulation. If the number one in the class is cheating, so everybody can cheat. So Russia started by attacking Georgia and creating two separate republics in Georgia, in Georgian territory, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Then it attacked Ukraine in 2014 and took part of the Donbass and annexed Crimea. And then it interfered massively the year after in the Syrian civil war out of a big military base near Latakia. And then it attacked Ukraine. And what do you find? You find the same things you had in 2003. Fake arguments to justify the war. You know, polls indicated before the attack that the Russian speakers of Ukraine did not want Russia to come and help them. Like 6 or 7% of them wanted or considered themselves as Russians and wanted this help. They considered themselves as Ukrainians in big numbers. So the idea that it was a legitimate defense, according to Article 51 of the Charter, was as fake as the arguments used by the Americans in 2003 to attack Iraq. And then a number of other countries started also interfering. Turkey started interfering in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, everywhere. Iran was already interfering in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, elsewhere, and so many other countries. Chad was interfering in 3-4 African Union states. Rwanda became a little Sparta, interfering everywhere in that continent. So what I'm trying to say, when the top country and the artisan of the international order violates it itself, emulation becomes almost inevitable. And that's what we have. And that's the thread going from Baghdad to Kiev.
That's the deregulation of force. So you have been speaking a lot. I would move back to the main region after Iraq. You know that Libya has soon become another severe test for the international community resolve and credibility, especially challenging what was the order, so to say, before 2011 was existing in the country. You had a prominent role in seeking stability in that country, but now Libya seems again back to square one. I mean, what do you think Libya, and where do you think Libya is heading now?
Look, if my perspective is the perspective of the regular Libyan, of the Libyan in the street. The Libyan in the street needs basically two things, and he's getting them. First, he needs a consolidated ceasefire. I'm happy to say that the ceasefire established in 2020 is still there. And I hope it remains there. And I hope the basic committee that produced that ceasefire, the 5+5 military committee, I'm very proud of having created after a lot of difficulty, is still operating and met last week. So the Libyan in the street first wants peace. And a ceasefire is there, and it is holding against all bets. And the second thing the Libyan in the street needs is a salary. And Libya under Gaddafi, and it's still valid now, has created its own formula of universal basic income, UBI, by putting everybody on the state payroll. So you need for that the oil to flow. And the oil is flowing. I spent a lot of time in Libya during my stay there, trying to have the oil flow again, not for the companies, not for Eni or Total or I don't know whom, but for the Libyan to still get his UBI. And it is getting. The oil is flowing. They are producing around 1.2 million barrels a day. That's okay. That's okay. So the two basic requests of the Libyan industry are there, and the situation is not square one. It's much better than what it used to be. Now you have the political issue. The political issue, you have a serious problem here, which is a political class that is completely unable to start thinking of building a state. So they are like a kleptocracy fighting for a larger slice of the cake. They want to divide power among themselves without even thinking of a state. And if they want to think of a state, they need to have rules of the game, a constitution, an electoral law. When you talk to this political class, you discover that they are ready to have a constitution or an electoral law or other laws as long as it serves their purposes. But the idea of a rule that is abstract, that is beyond their interest, is not there. That is why state building in Libya will take time. And during that time, I hope that the two basic requests of the Libyan industry are respected. That is ceasefire, but it will take time because most of the political units, all the political units of this kleptocracy in Libya, have the power to block initiatives, but not to propose new initiatives. So they are blocking each other. And that's why state building will take time in Libya. It's probably a generational issue. And we need to be patient. We need to keep trying to help them in that purpose if they want it, because a lot of them do not want to build a state and are very happy. At least the kleptocracy that is ruling Libya now is very happy with this situation of non-state or quasi-state or proto-state, call it as you wish. Now, for the international community, I think its role has been exaggerated. And it's contradictory, basically. I saw that Obama wrote in his memoirs that he regretted that he intervened in Libya. Thank you. And I saw that Monsieur Macron has regretted that Sarkozy has intervened in Libya. Thank you. And has asked for to be forgiven. But in Libya, we had the same problem we had in Iraq as well. And that is, we exaggerated the threat. We personalized too much the attack against Gaddafi. And more importantly, nobody thought of the day after. Nobody thought of the day after in Iraq, and nobody thought of the day after in Libya. And we are all paying very, very, very dearly for that.
Thank you. And it's very interesting. So what you're saying is that the social contract works in Libya, but there are many, or it's not clear who guarantees this social contract. There are many people and who guarantees the social contract. So I wanted to focus again on, let's say, the state-citizen relationship in the region, because we are seeing so much turmoil and change and willingness to redefine this social contract. So I want to ask you, you know, we live in a very confused time, but the MENA region is perhaps even more in turmoil than some years ago, not 2011, because many things are changing. We saw last year a huge increase in the cost of food and what is the basic needs for the people. So I wanted to ask you how you see the future of the state-citizen relationship in the MENA region.
Well, it is not very bright. In fact, we are still living in the aftermath of the complete failure of what was called the Arab Spring, which was an attempt to redefine the social contract in almost half of the states of the region. In fact, the counter-reaction has won the Arab Spring, and this attempt has failed in all of the countries. And we have now new dictatorships here and there, or civil wars in Yemen and Syria. And the latest events in Tunisia are very sad, really. It's a return to a system that is more authoritarian than it had been under Ben Ali before all started in 2011. So we are in the aftermath of the post. That's why I don't expect a new turmoil to start, a new political mobilization in the streets to start in order to redefine that social contract, because the sort of vivid parts of the nations are still under this feeling that they lost their bet the first time. But what is happening is somehow different. First, you have a more serious inequality among states, because the oil countries are making a lot of money and the others are not. And second, within the countries, you have even a higher level of inequality. So I guess more than religious or other forms of contestation, we will see here and there more and more social unrest rather than political or religious contestation of the powers in place.
Well, thank you, Professor Salamé, for your reflections, your original and always thought-provoking analysis. The MENA region is, once again, I would say, undertaking a transformative phase with a mix of shifting alliances, new priorities, and old habits, as you mentioned. As Rome Dialogues, we are deeply interested in what is and this crucial region looks like now and how it will in tomorrow's world. And today we have put this broader investigation under the spotlight. Thank you for watching us, and thank you once again, Professor Salamé, for sharing your thoughts with us.